Yeah, my name is Lovelace. I'm with a company called Source Allies. I'm a software consultant, been working for over a decade, doing more development positions, doing DevOps work, and more recently doing consulting work where I'm going and talking different places, for better or for worse, about generative AI a lot of the time. I was in the last talk right before lunch, and I heard when that word was brought up, many groans across the audience, and you're not wrong. If you are going to do generative AI, what I am really passionate about is doing it in a way that's going to be responsible, it's going to be reliable, and hopefully is going to be correct, because no one wants to be incorrect all the time with this non-deterministic solution, right? So let's take a look at what that means. There are lots of different ways you can approach measuring what a generative AI solution does, and really the best way to think about it is, how would I determine if a human knows the information that I want them to know? I would probably give them a test, for better or for worse, right? And there are lots of different tests that you can do. You can do true-false tests, you can do multiple choice tests, but let's focus on the hard one that people don't know how to do as well, which is open-ended tests. When you have an open-ended test for a human, you have to have someone that scores that test, and it's objective. It's a little bit hard, or sorry, no, it's subjective. It's a little bit hard to do that. But when you do have open-ended questions that you're using to evaluate a generative AI solution, there are lots of different cool metrics that you can start measuring. So a thing called answer correctness, which is my favorite, faithfulness, relevancy. There are probably like 4 or 5 other ones, and I'll show you a fun graph with lots of colors later. But what does that actually look like in practice? So here's an example of answer correctness on a project I've worked in insurance. So highly regulated environment, can't be wrong, don't want to be wrong, or you're going to be sued. So here's a question. For this policy, what's the max amount of dependent voluntary life group insurance coverage allowed to be elected? Everybody's favorite topic. So our ground truth, or the answer that we really want this thing to give back when we ask it this question, is for a spouse, it's 300,000. For a child, it's 20,000. And then these maximum amounts can be elected by employees in classes 1 and 2. Makes sense. If you were to look at that and you were to say how many different ideas are represented in this ground truth or this perfect answer, you'd maybe come up with like 3, right? 1 for the spouse amount, 1 for the child amount, and then 1 for that it can only be elected by employees in classes 1 and 2. So that's exactly how we want to break this apart, using LLMs as the judge to do something like this. So you can see that our solution in this case generated an answer that gave us the information about the spouse amount, gave us the information about the child amount, but do you see what's missing? The class, the employee class. And if you look down in the bottom left there, you see an answer correctness of 67%. If I go look at that and I see exactly how the LLM judge broke that apart based on those number of statements, you can see that it agrees with what we just said. So our ground truth says that this can only be done by employees in classes 1 and 2, but both of them say the other 2 statements. And you just do very, very simple math from there. You break this into ideas, and then you measure the amounts of those ideas and where they're present in your answers. Both of them had those, so you end up with a score of 2 over 3, or 66, 67%. Pretty cool. So let's look at what something a little bit more robust looks like. In this case, we've done this with a lot of different places, but Wells Fargo's headquartered in the same place we are, in Des Moines. And so we wanted to take some different information from the site. There's a lot of different information around personal checking accounts, savings, investing, small business, basically everything you see on there, besides maybe the corporate and investment banking. We wanted to be able to take that data, absorb it from the website, and then just chat with it, right? So it's not really formatted for something like this. It's really a terrible use case, but that's great. We wanted to measure it. So the first thing after we grab all that data and we take a look through it is we want to define success. So this goes back to what I believe Jim was talking about earlier. We want to make sure anytime you're doing something with generative AI that you are going back to the actual business problem, and you want to make sure that you're measuring what you want this to be able to solve for you that some other tool wouldn't be able to solve much more deterministically. So you can see all these questions. We have like 15 to 20 questions that we went through, and we said, based on the data that we're absorbing, I think that we should be able to answer this question. And if I were to ask someone this question that knows a whole lot about this subject and a lot about this data, they should be able to give me this perfect answer that has all of the pieces of information I'm looking for. So now I'm going to present you with a conundrum. We set this thing up, and let's ask something like, what's your best banking account? It gives me a lot of great information about different things, maybe different items I want to look at, even quotes the sources it got that information from, and then I turn around and I say, oh, actually, no, that's for my 14-year-old son. And then they come back and they say, hey, for your 14-year-old son, there's only one banking account that makes sense. It's the only one that they can even do at that age. All of the other ones require you to be 18 or above. This is a pretty cool interaction for very little setup here. Thank you. Oh, I'm done. Oh, it's over. All right, cool. All right, well, here's the question is, would you want to deploy this? It feels really good right now, but do you actually have any empirical evidence that says, hey, we should deploy this to production? And the answer is no. But if you are measuring all of this stuff against all of those ground truths that we talked about earlier on a regular basis, you get charts that measure metrics like these. And really, answer correctness is the big one. I can tell you that when I was able to do that conversation we just showed earlier, that was fairly impressive. We were at 52%, which is not good. You don't want to deploy anything to production that's going to be 52% correct. You want to be in the high 95. Usually we get to 99.5, 99.7% before we say this is something we want to deploy to production. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate your time. See you later.